A horse screamed and went down hard, throwing its rider into the dirt. The woman hit the ground rolling. Blood was already soaking through her leggings before she stopped moving. She tried to push herself up on her elbows. Her legs would not answer. Both broken below the knee, bones showing white through torn skin. She dragged herself toward a rifle 6 feet away in the grass. Her hands left red trails in the dust. Around her, the riders of her own band wheeled their horses. They looked down at her. Not one of them got off. Not one reached for her. The woman on the ground was called Namala, and she had ridden into more battles than half the men watching her bleed. They turned their horses and rode away. What did the cowboy who came over that ridge see that made him stop? Stay with me on this one. The cowboy's name was Cole Hennessy, and he had been riding alone for 3 days with 2 stray cattle in front of him and nothing on his mind but getting home before the weather turned. He came over the ridge at a slow walk because his roan was tired. The wind brought him the smell first. Blood and powder. He pulled up. Below him in the meadow he saw the dead horse, and beside the dead horse he saw the woman. He saw the trail in the dust where she had dragged herself. He saw the rifle she had not reached. Then he saw she was still moving. Cole was a man who had lived his whole life on the edges of other men's wars. He had seen Apache before. He had seen what white soldiers did to them and what they did back. He knew what kind of trouble lay below him in that meadow. He knew that a wounded Apache woman alone in the grass meant a war party had been there and would maybe come back. He knew that any white man who stopped to help her would be cutting his own throat with both hands. He sat on the roan a long minute. The wind moved through the grass. Then he stepped down. He walked slow, the way you walk toward a hurt animal you mean to save. His hands were empty. He kept them where she could see them. When he got close, he saw her better. Black hair caked with blood and dirt. Eyes open, sharp, watching him. Her right hand was creeping along the ground toward a knife at her belt. Cole stopped 6 feet out and crouched. "I ain't gonna touch you yet," he said. "I just want to look." She did not speak. She did not let go of the knife. He looked at her legs and his face changed. He had butchered enough beef in his life to know what crushed bone looked like. The horse must have rolled on her. Both legs were ruined below the knee. Bone fragments were already turning black at the edges where the air had been working on them. If she did not lose those legs in the next day, she would lose her life by the end of the week. "Lady," Cole said, "I don't speak your tongue and you maybe don't speak mine, but you're dying. You know it. I know it. I can stand here and watch, or I can pick you up. Those are the choices." Her hand had stopped moving toward the knife. "You stick me when I lift you," Cole said. "I'm gonna drop you, so make up your mind." He waited. The wind moved through the grass again. A long way off a hawk cried out once. She let go of the knife. Cole shrugged off his buckskin jacket and laid it on the grass. He worked his hands under her shoulders and her hips. She was lighter than he expected. She made no sound when he lifted her, but her face went the color of wet paper, and he felt the tremor go through her whole body. He laid her on the jacket and wrapped it around her and lifted her again and walked her to the roan. He had to lift her up across the saddle on her belly. There was no other way. He climbed up behind her. He took the lead rope of the strays and let them follow or wander as they pleased. He turned the roan toward home. His cabin sat at the bottom of a long draw, with a creek running past the door and a single cottonwood out front. He had built it himself 8 years back, the year his wife died of fever. He had not had a guest under that roof since the priest came out for the burial. He carried her inside. He laid her on his own bed. He cut her leggings off with his skinning knife and saw the wounds full and clean for the first time. He stood there a moment looking at them. Then he went out to the lean-to and brought back a bottle of clear corn whiskey, a needle, gut thread, and a small bone-handled knife he kept sharp enough to shave with. He came back to the bed and looked down at her. "This is going to be the worst day of your life," he said. "And I'm sorry it has to be me." She looked back at him. Her eyes were dry. "Do it," she said in plain English. Cole did not blink. He did not ask where she had learned the words. There would be time for that later if there was a later. He poured the whiskey on his hands. Cole had taken legs off cattle that had gone through fence wire. He had taken a leg off a man once in the war before he knew enough to know how. The man had died. He had remembered every step. He set the bone-handled knife and a small wood saw on the table by the bed. He folded a strap of leather and pressed it into her mouth. He tied her hands to the bedposts with rope, not to hold her down but to give her something to pull against. He poured whiskey into both wounds and into a tin cup and made her drink as much as she could swallow. He poured more on his knife. "I'm going to count to 3, he said. He cut on 2. She did not scream. She bit through the leather and her teeth showed white and red and her whole body went hard as wood. But no sound came out of her. Cole went fast because going fast was the only mercy. He came down onto bone and switched to the saw. He could feel her staring at him through the pain. He kept his eyes on his hands. When the first leg came free below the knee, he tied off the artery with gut thread the way an army surgeon had showed him in the war, and he wrapped the stump in a strip of clean cloth boiled an hour earlier. He moved to the other leg. He did it the same way. The whole thing took less than 20 minutes. When he was done, his arms were shaking and her breath was coming in shallow pulls and she was unconscious, but she was alive. He sat on the floor by the bed with his hands red to the elbows and watched the rise and fall of her chest until he was sure of it. Then he got up and washed and burned the cloths in the stove and put a fresh blanket over her and sat in the chair by the bed and did not sleep. She woke up the next afternoon. She woke up the day after that. By the 3rd day she could keep down water. By the 5th day she could keep down broth. She did not thank him. He did not expect her to. He learned her name on the 7th day, when she finally said it. Namala. She was a warrior of the Badonko Apache. She had ridden with men who would be remembered as long as anybody remembered the desert. She had taken her first scalp at 16. She was 31 years old. She told him these things flat and short, like a list, like she was making sure he understood who he had brought into his house, and what it meant if he changed his mind. "You don't owe me," she said. "If I am too much, you can put me out." "I'm not putting you out," Cole said. "My people put me out. I ain't your people." She looked at him a long time. Then she looked at the ceiling and did not speak again that night. The story of how it happened came out in pieces over the next 2 weeks. They had been running from a cavalry patrol. They had ridden hard for 3 days. Her horse, a sorrel mare she had raised from a foal, had stepped wrong in a wash and rolled. The mare had broken her own neck and crushed Namala's legs under the saddle. Her band had stopped. They had looked at her. She knew what they were thinking before they said it. A warrior who could not ride was meat. A warrior who could not run would slow them down and bring soldiers down on the women and children. The men of her band had argued. Some had wanted to shoot her quick, the way you do a horse. Some had wanted to leave her with a knife and a rifle and let her decide. Her cousin had wanted to carry her. Her uncle, who led them, had ended it. He had told them she was already dead. He had told her to her face. Then they had ridden away. "He was right," Namala said. "I was already dead." "You ain't dead now," Cole said. She did not answer. She got stronger. The wounds closed. Cole built her a wooden frame to sit up against in the bed, and then he built her a chair with a wide seat and short legs so she could sit at the table. He carried her between bed and chair without asking. After 2 months she could lift herself with her arms. After 3 she could swing her body from the bed to the chair on her own, and even she was surprised the first time she did it. The cabin had 2 rooms and 1 window that faced east. She watched the sunrise out of that window every morning. She watched it for a long time. She did not cry. Cole noticed she never cried. She had a stillness in her that came from somewhere he did not understand and did not feel he had any right to ask about. By the 4th month she was carving. He had given her a knife and a piece of pine and she had begun to whittle, slow at first, then faster, and pretty soon there were small wooden animals on the windowsill. A horse, a wolf, a bird with its wings folded. By the 5th month she was laughing sometimes when he said something stupid, which was often. By the 6th month, on a cold afternoon in October, Cole came in from the corral and found her at the table with a cup of black coffee in her hand and the pale sun coming through the window onto her face. "You feel all right today?" he asked. She looked up at him and almost smiled. "I feel like I might live," she said. Cole hung his hat on the peg by the door and he laughed a small laugh, and he sat down across from her with his own cup, and for the first time since the day he had ridden over the ridge, he believed that the worst was behind them. He was wrong. The hoofbeats came up the draw a little before dusk on a gray afternoon. Cole was at the woodpile splitting kindling. He stopped with the axe in the air. Namala was at the window watching. She had heard them before he did. By the time he set the axe down, she had pulled the rifle off the wall and laid it across her knees in her chair. A single horse. A man Cole knew. His name was Burl Atherton. He had a place 10 miles down the creek. He raised goats and he drank when he could afford to, and he had a face like a worn-out boot. He pulled up at the cottonwood and he did not get down. "Cole," he said. "Burl." Burl looked toward the cabin door. He could see Namala through the window and he looked at her once, fast, and then he looked back at his saddle horn. "They know," Burl said. "Who knows what?" "Lieutenant Mercer at Fort Bowie. They got a paper out on her. Somebody at McKinley's store ran his mouth. The patrol's coming up here tomorrow morning at first light. 6 men. I rode ahead of them to tell you." Cole leaned the axe against the woodpile. "That's good of you, Burl." Burl finally looked at him. His eyes were tired. "It ain't goodness," Burl said. "I told them she ain't here. I told them you live alone. I was already on my way to tell them that lie when I found out they were coming anyway. I rode hard. So now you know. Do what you want with it." "What would you do?" "I'd put her on a mule and send her south tonight. She can't ride. Then I'd go get a priest." Burl turned his horse and rode out of the draw without looking back. Cole stood by the woodpile for a long time after Burl was gone. The light was going out of the sky. When he turned around, Namala was watching him through the window with the rifle still across her knees. He went inside. He sat down on the bed across from her chair. He put his hands on his knees. He looked at her. "There's soldiers coming in the morning," he said. "I heard him. 6. I heard him. They mean to take you to Fort Bowie. After that I don't know. Probably hang you. Maybe send you to Florida. There's a stockade in Florida where they've been sending Apache. I have heard of it. I've been thinking on what to do." She set the rifle down on the table beside her chair. She folded her hands in her lap. She looked at him with that stillness she had that he had stopped trying to understand. "I will not run again," she said. "I ran with my people. That ended in a meadow. I will not run from yours. You can't fight 6 men, Namala. I know what I can do. I have a rifle and I have hands and I have a window. You go. Tonight. Take your horse and ride somewhere they cannot find you. I will sit at the window. When they come up the draw, I will make them remember me. They will not take me alive. After, you can come back to your cabin and you can bury what is left." Cole did not answer for a while. "You think I'd do that?" he finally said. "You should." "Well, I ain't going to." "Cole." It was the first time she had ever said his name out loud. He heard her say it and something went tight in his chest. 8 years I've been alone in this cabin," Cole said. 8 years I rode out every morning and rode back every night and there was nobody at the window. I came over a ridge 6 months ago and there was you in the grass. I picked you up. I brought you here. I cut your legs off you and I sewed up the stumps and I sat in that chair right there for 3 nights waiting to see if you'd open your eyes. You opened them. You've been opening them every morning since. So you tell me where I'm going tonight. You tell me what kind of man rides off and leaves the only person at his window." Namala did not answer him. She looked away. He saw her throat work. I'm not going anywhere, Cole said. If they come for both of us. There was a long silence in the cabin. Then she nodded. Once. Small. If you're still with me on this story, the cowboy and the warrior and the 6 men coming up the draw at first light, go on and hit that subscribe button. There's a lot more coming and I don't want you to miss it. Now back to it. That night, neither of them slept. Cole loaded every weapon in the cabin. A Winchester, a single-shot Sharps that had belonged to his father, a Colt revolver, and a double-barreled coach gun he had won in a card game 11 years before. He laid them out on the table in a row. He set boxes of cartridges beside each one. He pulled the bed across the floor and he turned it on its side under the front window. He brought Namala's chair to the place by the side window with the best line on the trail coming up the draw. He pushed the table near her so she could reach all 4 guns from where she sat. She watched him work and she did not say anything. When he was done, she lifted the Winchester and worked the lever and checked the load and set it across her knees the way she had set it before, like it had always belonged there. "Cole," she said. "Yeah. Thank you." He looked at her in the lamplight. He nodded once. Outside, the wind moved down the draw, and somewhere in the dark a coyote called. They came up the draw at first light, just like Burl had said. Cole heard them before he saw them. The soft thud of shod hooves on packed dirt. 6 horses riding loose, not in formation. He was at the front window with the Sharps. Namala was at the side window with the Winchester across her knees and the coach gun on the table within reach of her left hand. The cabin was cold. Neither of them had lit a fire since 2 in the morning. The lieutenant rode at the head. A young man with a sandy beard and a clean uniform. Mercer. He held up a hand and the patrol stopped at the cottonwood, just inside rifle range of the cabin. "Hennessy," Mercer called. "I'm Lieutenant Mercer. Come out, please." Cole did not move. "We have a warrant for an Apache woman believed to be in your home. If you give her up, we have no business with you. You have my word." Cole opened the front shutter 2 inches. "Lieutenant," he called back, "there's no Apache woman here. Then you won't mind us looking." "I do mind." Mercer was quiet a long moment. "Sir," he said, "you understand the position you put me in. I understand mine just fine." The lieutenant looked back at his men. He looked at the cabin. He looked at the cottonwood. He was not a stupid man. Cole could see him doing the math. A man in a cabin with thick walls and good lines of sight could kill 3 of his men before they crossed the open ground. The lieutenant did not want to lose 3 men. He did not want to lose any. "Hennessy," Mercer called. "This is your last chance." "You said that 2 minutes ago," Cole called back. Mercer raised his arm. "Spread out," he said to his men. "Sergeant Reeves, take the back." That was when Namala fired. She did not aim for Mercer. She aimed for the cottonwood 8 feet over his head. The Winchester cracked once and a strip of bark exploded off the trunk and Mercer's horse reared and dumped him on his back in the dirt. 2 of the troopers' horses bolted. A 3rd trooper went off his saddle on his own. 3 men down without a wound between them. Mercer scrambled up and ran for the cover of a fallen log. The other troopers dragged themselves into the brush and behind their horses where the horses had not run. A long silence settled over the meadow. "Tell him," Namala called from the side window in clear English, "that the next bullet will not miss." There was movement behind the log. "You're harboring a hostile Hennessy," Mercer called. "I'm sitting in my own home, Lieutenant. That woman has killed white men. So have I, Lieutenant. So have you. So has every man behind that log." Silence. "I have 6 men, Hennessy. You had 6 men. You got 5 now. I've been counting muzzles. The one in the brush on the left ain't pointing at me. He's pointing at the ground. He's wondering if this is the day he dies for a lieutenant he met last week." There was a sharp curse from the brush on the left. "I got a wounded woman in here, Lieutenant," Cole called. "She has lost both her legs. She is not going to fight you in the field. She is not going to ride against the army again as long as she draws breath. She wants to live in this cabin with me. That is all she wants. You ride away today and you do not come back. And you have my word that nobody on the United States side of anything will hear of her again. You ride at this cabin and I am going to kill you and then I am going to kill the man behind you. Make your decision, Lieutenant. The sun is up and the day is getting long. A long silence. And if I ride away, Mercer called. What do I tell my colonel? You tell him there was no Apache woman at this cabin and the rumor was wrong. You tell him a cowboy named Hennessy lives there alone and shot at you because he thought you were horse thieves. You tell him whatever you need to tell him to keep your stripes. I do not care what you tell him. I care what you do. Another silence. A long one this time. The lieutenant slowly stood up from behind the log. He did not raise his rifle. Sergeant Reeves, he called. Mount up. We're heading back to the fort. The intelligence was bad. Sir, somebody said. Mount up. The patrol gathered itself slow. The bolted horses had to be caught. One trooper had a sprained shoulder from his fall and had to be helped into the saddle. Through all of it, Cole did not lower the Sharps, and Namela did not lower the Winchester. The lieutenant climbed onto his own horse. Last. He looked at the cabin one more time. Hennessy, he called. Lieutenant. If I see her name on another paper, I will not come up this draw alone. Do you understand me? You won't see her name. Then we never had this conversation. No, sir, we didn't. The patrol turned and rode out of the draw the way it had come. Cole watched them until the last horse went out of sight around the bend, and then he watched the empty draw for 10 minutes more, just to be sure. Then he set the Sharps down on the table. His hands were shaking. He looked across the room at Namela. She had not lowered the Winchester yet. Her face was blank. Her knuckles were white on the stock. You can put it down, he said. She put it down. She bent forward in her chair and pressed her forehead against the table, and her shoulders started to shake. Not crying. Not quite. Something deeper than crying. Cole crossed the room and he knelt down beside her chair and he put his hand flat on her back. And he kept it there, and he did not say anything. Outside, a single magpie landed on the cottonwood and looked at the cabin and flew away. The patrol did not come back. Cole rode down to McKinley's store the following Saturday and he bought flour and salt and a bag of yellow sugar, and he did not speak to anybody and nobody asked him anything. Burl Atherton came up the draw 2 weeks later with a bottle of whiskey, and the two of them sat on the porch and drank it without saying very much. And Burl shook Cole's hand when he left and rode home in the dark. Word went around the territory that the lieutenant at Fort Bowie had checked out a bad lead, and there was no Apache hidden in the Mogollon country. Some people believed it. Some did not. Of the ones who did not, most kept it to themselves because Cole Hennessy kept his mouth shut and his rifle clean, and a man like that is easier to leave alone than to test. The first snow came in November. That winter, Cole built her a chair with wheels. He had been thinking about it for months. He had drawn the design on the back of a feed sack with a piece of charcoal. He had made the wheels himself out of oak and iron rim, and he had cut and joined the seat from a piece of ash that had stood in his yard for 2 summers waiting to be useful. He set the wheels low and wide so the chair would not tip on rough ground. He put long handles on the back so he could push her, and he put smaller wheels in front so she could push herself when the floor was smooth. The first time he rolled her out the door of the cabin and onto the porch and into the open air. She sat very straight in the chair with her hands flat on the armrests, and she looked at the sky like she had not seen it in a long time. "It is a good chair," she said. "It'll do," Cole said. She looked at him. "It is a very good chair," she said. In the spring, she started teaching him Apache. Not all of it. The words she felt like sharing. The word for sunrise, which was a long word. The word for a horse with a white face. The word for a man who is loud at a fire. She would say the word and then she would say what it meant, and Cole would try to repeat it and she would laugh at him, and he would say it again worse on purpose and she would laugh harder. He had not heard a woman laugh in his cabin in 9 years. Some afternoons he would push her in the chair down to the creek and he would sit on the bank with a fishing line and she would carve. The wooden animals on her windowsill grew into a small herd. She gave them away when traders came up the draw, a wolf to a peddler, a rabbit to a tinker's child. Word got out, slow, that there was a woman at the Hennessy place who carved animals out of pine that looked like they were about to move. People started coming for them on purpose. She would sit on the porch in her chair and they would talk to her and she would talk back in English, in a voice that had gotten softer over the years, and they would leave with a horse or a bear or a hawk in their saddlebag. Some of them, after a while, started calling her Mrs. Hennessy. She and Cole never corrected them and they never confirmed it. There was no priest involved and no paper signed. There did not need to be. 2 summers after the lieutenant rode away, a young Apache man came up the draw on a thin pony. Cole was at the corral. He saw the rider coming and he stood and watched. The young man stopped at the cottonwood and he sat looking at the cabin. Namala was on the porch in her chair. She saw the rider and her hands stopped moving on her carving. She stared a long time. Then she said one word in her own language, soft, almost a whisper. The young man got down from the pony and walked up to the porch. He stopped at the step. He spoke to her in Apache. She answered him. They spoke for a long time. Cole did not come closer. He did not understand the words. He understood the faces. The young man's face was the face of somebody who had ridden a long way to ask a question he did not want the answer to. After a while she reached into the basket beside her chair, and she took out a small wooden horse and she handed it to him. The young man took it. He held it in both his hands. He looked at it and he looked at her and his eyes filled up. He said one more word to her, soft, and she said the same word back to him and he got back on his pony and he rode away. That night Cole asked her at the table who he was. "The cousin who wanted to carry me," Namala said. "The one who lost the argument. What did he come for?" "He came to see if I was alive." "Did you forgive him?" She thought about that a long time. "There is nothing to forgive," she said. "He did not put me out. The ones who put me out are dead now. The cavalry caught them in a canyon last winter. He came to tell me, and to see." She looked at Cole across the table in the lamplight, and her face was as still as it had been the day he found her in the grass. But it was not the same stillness. The stillness in the grass had been the stillness of somebody preparing to die. The stillness now was something else. It was the stillness of a person who had come a long way and was where she meant to be. "I was already dead," she said. "And then I was not." Cole reached across the table and he took her hand. Outside, the wind moved down the draw. A hawk cried out once. The cottonwood by the door turned its leaves in the late summer light.